I can't believe we're already on round 3 of 8 horror movies that you have never heard of. 4 if you include the one that I did which was exclusively Japanese movies. Now, this is the series that I am the most proud of here on my channel, and if you know me, you'll know I love finding movies that nobody has ever heard of and putting the word out there and being like, please go and watch these movies and give them some more love. And at this point, I've got a bit of a record to maintain here on my channel, so here's the question. Can I once again recommend to you 8 movies that you have never heard of? If you're new here, I go by Hordes, and if you're not new, welcome back. I talk about horror movies here on my channel on Mondays and Fridays, so if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, maybe hit that subscribe button and join the Horde here on YouTube. And if you would like to know the other 16 movies that I have mentioned here on my channel before that you have never heard of, I will leave them linked in the end card at the end of the video. So without further ado, 8 horror movies that you have never heard of. Rokuroku, The Promise of the Witch from 2017 is a Japanese supernatural anthology horror. A quiet woman receives a social media request from a middle school friend who she doesn't remember fondly. The two women meet at a hotel's restaurant where they find a room numbered 666, containing Rokuroku, a long-necked woman wearing a red kimono. If you like Japanese mythology, folklore, and yokai, then this movie is one for you, because this anthology works in a slightly similar way to the movie Trick or Treat, where there is a main story that flows throughout the entire movie, and there are short little stories that organically interweave in and out of this main storyline. It uses famous stories from Japanese folklore, urban legend, and yokai, and adds a newer, slightly more modern twist on them. And if you, like myself, are familiar with all of these things, you will be able to spot some of these stories from a mile off. One of my personal favourite Japanese stories is The Red Shoes, which is a nursery rhyme originally, and it happens to also feature in this movie. It does have a very similar vibe to Junji Ito's short stories, so let's just say they are supernatural with a slightly sinister undertone, which is never going to be a bad thing.
Hey there demons, it's me, your boy.
You can expect stories of Japanese urban legend and yokai, some bad yet wonderfully charming CGI and practical effects done on such a low budget, and a hotel that is not all as it seems on the surface. Monster Mash from 2024 is a horror comedy. Dracula, Wolfman, the Mummy, and the Invisible Man must work together to stop Dr. Frankenstein and his monster, who has decided to create the ultimate unstoppable monster out of pieces of each of these classic universal monsters. Okay, so this one has completely flown under the radar this year, and when I tell you, if you love the classic universal monsters, this one is perfect for this Halloween/spooky season, and I will hold my hands up and say that I was not expecting much from this low-budget horror comedy, and oh boy did this one prove me wrong. It is campy without being incredibly stupid and over the top, and the monsters in this are also a slightly newer twist on themselves while also still being authentic to their original counterparts. Yes, I am kind of sad that my main boy Guildman is not included in this, aka Creature from the Black Lagoon, but it does include Dracula, the Wolfman, the Mummy, and the Invisible Man going head to head with Victor Frankenstein, and the whole time Frankenstein's monster is forming the most adorable friendship with Dracula's daughter, who is being held as bait.
And you're adorable.
I'm adorable!
You can expect a fresh new take on classic Universal monsters, an adorable friendship between a monster and a vampire girl, and classic Universal monsters working to take down an evil genius who is trying to make something that could rival Nemesis from Resident Evil. Big Bad Wolf from 2006 is a werewolf slasher horror. When Derek takes his college classmates to his stepfather's cabin for a party, they are attacked by a wolf-like beast that hunts down his classmates and kills them with sadistic glee. Back home, Derek begins to suspect that his abusive stepfather Mitch is actually a werewolf. With the help of his friend Sam, Derek must find the courage to face the unleashed beast in a final night of unimaginable horror. I know I've got some werewolf fans right here on my channel, back from when I recommended Howl from 2015, but how about a werewolf that is gonna rip frat pledges to pieces along with their girlfriends in a cabin in the middle of nowhere? How about making them a feral, trash-talking werewolf who decides to quote the Little Pigs rhyme at them just to trash talk, and then decides to dry hump someone to death while wearing John Cena jorts?
She's dead.
Those of us who have had terrible step-parents will tell you if you get a bad one, they are terrible. And to top it off, how about making those terrible step-parents into werewolves who are determined to make your life miserable at every turn? You would be walking around with wormwood in your pockets and looking like a spare branch of Claire's accessories where you were wearing that much silver. You can expect lots of blood, limbs getting ripped off, an alt mechanic girl on a bike, and a werewolf to rip off a man's nuts. Sugar Street Studio from 2021 is a Hong Kong paranormal horror comedy. A producer convinces some young creators of horror props to set up a haunted house and use it as a film set. The building is an old haunted film studio. 30 years earlier, an actor in a clown costume went mad and killed himself and his lover in a fire. But after communicating with the ghosts, the kids discovered that the real story of what happened is quite different to what they've been led to believe. This one is a little bit more niche for my fans of Asian cinema out there, because Sugar Street Studio is about a film studio that is haunted by the ghosts of a lady in a red dress and a clown, and this film studio gets turned into a haunt attraction by a man who is not prepared to spend any money on it. So unfortunately for the special effects makeup artists that get roped into this, they end up also playing the scare actors in this attraction. What actually happens though is the ghosts keep making themselves known to people who come to the attraction, so all of a sudden this attraction becomes incredibly popular. You follow the special effects makeup artists as they learn the true story about what happened to this film studio 30 years prior. And in the world of Hollywood, there are some dirty secrets, and this is what happens when ghosts refuse to stay dead and buried. It is a tribute to classic Hong Kong horror comedies such as the Mr. Vampire series back from the 1980s. So this is for a newer audience, I would say, trying to get into this style of cinema. I would also recommend the movie Rigor Mortis if you haven't seen it. It's again another one inspired by the Mr. Vampire series, but rather than being a horror comedy, that is definitely a horror action movie. So I'll throw that in as another bonus recommendation. But Sugar Street Studio is campy and cheesy. It has its moments of seriousness, but the effects in this are what really help this movie shine, because its ghosts are great. I love the ghosts in this movie. You can expect the worst boss in haunt attraction history who is only there for the money, a group of special effects makeup artists who are about to uncover a 30-year-old murder plot, and two ghosts who just want to expose the truth of their death so that they can finally rest in peace. Auntie Lee's Meat Pies from 1992 is a cannibal horror comedy. A devil-worshipping woman sends out her 4 beautiful nieces to find young men who are lured back to her place so they can be killed, ground up, and sold in her famous meat pies. It is very rare that I get to recommend something on my channel that is as old as I am, and I only discovered this movie when I was elbows deep on Tubi the last time that I was in the US. This movie from the 90s has flown completely under the radar. This movie is like if the Sawyer family from Texas Chainsaw Massacre had a more well-to-do, put-together set of cousins that lived in the sort of Texas area, and they were ruled by a female matriarch who is played by Karen Black, who does not get the love that she deserves for this movie, who happens to send out her 4 nieces, all played by former Playboy playmates, out into the wild to find men to lure back to their house to put in her famous meat pies. I wasn't sure what to expect when I first found this movie, and all I can tell you is, it is like somebody sat down and said, what if we take the stereotypical victim from an exploitation movie, which is a conventionally attractive woman, and absolutely flip that on its head and make all of these women into one deadly family unit that you would not want to come across in the wild, because you would just be dead. These women have rifles in the back of their cars just so that they can pop people's tires when they find their victims. It is campy, it is cheesy, it is such a fun take on a cannibal movie that I just didn't expect, and it is such a great watch.
I don't want to be a pie. I don't like gravy.
You can expect Pat Moretti, aka Mr. Miyagi from the Karate Kid movies, as a chain-smoking sheriff with the most questionable southern accent you have ever heard, a female matriarch who will do absolutely anything to protect her nieces, 4 nieces with some incredibly questionable bedrooms, and a rock band who wishes that they had stayed absolutely anywhere else on the day that they broke down. All Jacked Up and Full of Worms from 2022 is a surreal horror comedy. Roscoe, a janitor at a sleazy love motel whose girlfriend has brought another man home for strange rituals, drifts through life until he discovers a hidden stash of powerful hallucinogenic worms. Guided by the visions of a giant floating worm, he encounters Benny, a moped enthusiast trying to manifest a baby from an inanimate sex doll. They fall in love with doing worms together on a downward spiral into primordial ooze. Heads up, this movie is weird, and because of that, it is going to be a love-hate movie for a lot of people, and I think that this one is certainly not going to be for everybody, and I will be the first to say that this one wasn't for me, but I can absolutely tell you who this movie is made for. All Jacked Up and Full of Worms is like if you took David Lynch surrealism and John Waters Gross Out, put them both in a blender together, and the result is the ultimate bad trip that you got told about in the Say No to Drugs campaigns back in the 80s and 90s.
Stop it. Get some help.
If John Waters hasn't seen this movie, somebody needs to get on that immediately because it has him written all over it, even though he has nothing to do with it. And yes, you heard the plot correctly. It really is about snorting hallucinogenic worms because your life is crap and you would like to think for a brief moment that it could actually get better. There are quite a few potential trigger warnings in this one, and I don't just mean about substance abuse, so if you are interested in this one, I would suggest maybe checking on Does the Dog Die First, because like I said, there's quite a few trigger warnings in this one, and I think a lot of people might be a bit uncomfortable with this one. You can expect worms, a man searching for friendship when his relationship takes an unexpected turn, the creepiest doll you've ever seen, and so much goo. Hellarious is a 2019 horror comedy anthology. 7 of the most legendary horror comedy shorts made from the world's best genre filmmakers combined into one anthology. Try not to die laughing. If you are familiar with my channel, you will know that when it comes to horror comedies, if it's niche and it's out there, I will find it, and I have watched more anthologies this year than I have ever watched in the past, but this is also the first anthology that I have come across that is purely horror comedies. Now, each of these shorts is incredibly different from the previous one, and there is actually some budget behind them, which is quite nice to see. There is a great mix of themes and topics in Hellarious, which is only 1 hour and 20 minutes, so it is incredibly pacey and packs a lot into its short runtime. There really is something for absolutely everybody in this movie. Now, it is campy, it is cheesy, and I love a movie that is fully self-aware of this, and that is absolutely Hellarious. This would be a great option if you have friends around and nobody can agree on what you want to watch, and I don't think anybody would be disappointed in this movie because it is just straight up fun from the beginning until the very end. And if anybody is curious, my personal favourites in this one is shorts number 1 and shorts number 5. You can expect murdered wives that refuse to stay dead, dinner ladies that will do absolutely anything for Johnny Depp to find out why you should always return your grocery store cart, and so much more. Hellions from 2015 is a surreal horror drama. Strange trick-or-treaters plague conflicted teenager Dora in her isolated home on Halloween. Under siege by forces she can't understand, Dora must defend both body and soul from relentless Hellions dead set on possessing something Dora will not give them. Nothing against anybody who has kids, but movies like Hellion only confirm my decision to remain childless, because when I tell you the kids in this movie are feral little nightmares, we're talking the kind of feral little nightmares that will claw and gnaw their way into your house using their hands and teeth, wearing their hodgepodge Halloween costumes, only to then try and slice your face off with a turkey carver kind of feral little nightmares. Now, This movie has quite a few similarities to another movie that I enjoy called Cherry Tree, which also came out in 2015 and is surprisingly one of the trailers on the Hellions DVD. It even comes down to the same similarities of being about rapid speed pregnancy, whereas in Cherry Tree though it is about a coven of witches. In this one it is children from your nightmares trying to claim an unborn child.
You guys are in a crisis. I'm on my way.
This is my wildcard pick, and it's going to be a love or hate movie for a lot of people, because what starts off as a classic teen Home Alone kind of horror movie set on Halloween quickly descends into a hallucinogenic nightmare dipped in a pink and brown filter where you no longer know what is real and what is fake. You can expect feral children in hodgepodge Halloween costumes, a teenage girl marked by these feral children for her pregnancy, and a nightmare dipped in an all-pink filter. So there you have it, round 3 of 8 horror movies that I think you have never heard of. And if you are interested in watching any of these movies, I will leave links to justwatch.com in my description bar like I do on every video, so you can find out where all of these are streaming in your country. If you would like to know where else you can find me though, I am also over on Instagram and Letterboxd at HordesOfHorror, and I have watched over 160 horror movies so far just this year, so there are plenty that I haven't spoken about right here on YouTube. But speaking of YouTube, I will be back on Friday with another solo movie review, and this time it is time for a 2024 release that just came out that I haven't heard a single other person talk about. So we're going to find out if it's actually worth your time. So until next time, bye.